Okay, so I don't read quite as much as I like to think that I do, and a lot of my reading is recreational, meaning that I'm not looking for deep philosophical meanings in my books. And the majority of the books that I read are science fiction and fantasy novels, so again, not extremely deep philosophical books here. That said, I was able to come up with five books that have influenced the way I think about things, and I'll go through them in the order that I read them. Warning, there will be a few spoilers ahead. The first book, or rather book series in this case, is the Harry Potter series. I don't think I need to give you a plot synopsis on this one. I'm assuming that you're familiar with it. But these are sort of the earliest young adult books that I remember reading, and I read them a lot. And I listened to the audiobooks a lot. I loved them, I still love them, and looking back, these books are most likely the reason that I enjoy reading, especially reading fantasy. And so that's something that I got from reading the Harry Potter books. The second book is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Ender's Game is a science fiction novel about a very young boy, somewhere from like 6 to 10, if I remember correctly, and he's brought to an interstellar military academy to help fight against an alien threat. And in the academy, he quickly rises through the ranks until he starts going through some training exercises that will enable him to command a fleet of ships. What our main character doesn't know is that these training exercises are actually real battles. He's commanding real human ships in real time, and he's killing real aliens. And if he had known this, he likely would not have made the decision that he does at the end, where he blows up the aliens' planet and thereby ends their entire race. This book is kind of a weird one because it didn't impact my thinking much the first time I read it, but looking back, I can see several messages that I got out of it over the years. Every time I reread this book, I kind of get a new message out of it. One would be to think outside the box. There's no gravity in the training rooms, but most of the people think of down as being the direction of gravity outside the training room. And Ender instead instructs his soldiers to think of the enemy's gate as down, to let them keep their orientation during a fight, because you will sometimes forget which direction gravity was outside the room in the middle of a fight. If you know that the enemy's gate is down, you can always keep your bearings about you. Another is not to believe everything that you're told. As I mentioned, Ender kind of missed the clues that his training exercises were real and not training exercises, and just kind of believed what his mentor told him. And it goes without saying that he comes to regret this later. The third book is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. We've all read this book, but this book really marked a turning point in my life. It was this book, along with the Ruling Ideas class, that really started me thinking critically. Outliers is about thinking critically about data outliers and why certain patterns that seemingly defy logic show up. And the Ruling Ideas class was about critical thinking across various disciplines. And critical thinking is a life skill that I was learning outside of class as much as in class, and it's probably the most important skill that I learned during my time in undergrad. So that's why I have Outliers on my list. The fourth book is The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I read what they called the singles edition. The original book was meant for as like a couples book to help couples get together. I read the singles edition as part of a Sunday school class, and it kind of completely changed how I think about other people's actions. This book isn't just about love in a couples sense, as you can tell from the singles edition part. It's more about sort of every relationship in our lives. And I primarily speak the love language of quality time. That's how I show love. I spend time with people, and that's how I understand love from others the best. And before I read this book, I didn't really understand physical touch or words of affirmation as being ways to show love. Like I get like hugging and saying I love you and all that, but it goes deeper than that. It's after having read this book, I can understand other people better. Like I can tell that when somebody says something like, "Hey, I really liked this song you recommended." That's a way that they're showing their love. The fifth and final book that I want to talk about is the book that I bring up every time I get the chance, which is Worm. Worm changed a lot about my worldview, but I want to focus on how it changed the way I think about myself. You know the saying, we judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions? There's a lot of that going on in this book. The story is told from the point of view of this girl, Taylor, and this girl does a very good job of justifying her actions to herself. There's a lot of, oh, I just need to do this slightly evil thing in order to do a very good thing. But all these things kind of add up, and I would argue that the main character is not a good person, despite her intentions. However, another person could read this book and argue that she only did what she had to, and that doesn't make her a bad person. I disagree, but I could see how someone could come to that conclusion. Also, it's probably important that I point out that when I say she's not a good person, all of the so-called good people in this book, I don't consider them good people. They all have lots of flaws, and only a handful of them manage to redeem themselves to me by the end of the book. But anyway, that's one of the things about my worldview that has changed since I've read this book, is that I've become more judgmental of myself as a result. Now it's my turn to ask a question next, and the question is going to be, if you were asked to teach a course at a university, at like an undergraduate level, what would you teach? So think something along the lines of a topics course. I would like to teach a course about basic artificial intelligence. It would be structured similar to the introductory course I took last fall, starting with what basically amounts to statistical analysis, and then working up to basic neural networks at the end of the semester. And the one thing that I would remove from that course would be the section on support vector machines, which are very confusing and not really used anymore. But I'm interested to hear what y'all would teach about. I look forward to your videos.